Hello and welcome back to KXAN Plus. I'm your host, Esmeralda Zamora, and we are recording this Kristen's Classroom episode on Wednesday, November 19th. And with me to do this is our KXAN meteorologist, Kristen Currie. Kristen, good morning. How you doing?
Good morning. Not too bad. Finally, back in the storm track. So weather getting a little busy, but we need the rain. So this is a good thing.
And if you see behind me, it looks pretty cloudy. We woke up to some drizzles this morning,
hmm
so we can expect that for the rest of the weekend, maybe?
I think it'll be a little spotty to start, but eventually we'll get some good rain in here. It looks like in the Austin area tomorrow. So slowly but surely, we just have to be a little patient.
Well, this topic that we're covering today is not only helpful for us this weekend of November where we're seeing rain, but if you're watching this live stream on a different time, it's always a good idea to keep these things in mind and stay safe during climate like this or weather like this, right?
Absolutely. We're talking about flood safety today. And the reason we do this now ahead of the event is one, so we can be prepared for what's to come. There is a flood risk tonight, but also we want to review these things often because I would say when we get into a flood event, we're not necessarily looking at a whole lot of time to get into the nitty gritty of flood preparedness. We want these things to be like natural, right? They just kick in natural habits of, okay, with a flood watch, I do this. With a flood warning, I do this. So I want that to be instincts for us by the time we actually see those things go up. Not that it's a guarantee we see a flash flood warning tonight, but we've already got the flood watch up. So we know that the ingredients are there.
Yes, we've had that flood watch out for a couple days now, so we're preparing as hard
Yes.
as we can, but we need to know some of the basics that will help us be speedy, just like you mentioned.
Exactly. So, what do we need to think about before the flood, during the flood, and after the flood? That's kind of how I broke this down. So, obviously, we'll start with the before, the
Hmm.
preparation, and everybody does it a little differently. These are just my tips that I want you guys to kind of marinate over when it comes to preparing for the situation of a possible flood. What's tricky about any sort of weather phenomenon is very rarely is it black and white, right? Every storm is different. Every weather situation is different. It's not usually an A plus B equals C. It's okay, we got to evaluate the surroundings, evaluate how fast the rain is coming down, where am I during that storm, all different things. But I'm kind of broad stroking this and generalizing a lot of these tips of what you can do to just kind of settle in on and then tweak them depending on where you are, who you're with, and that sort of thing. One of the main things we can do, not only before a flood, but for any sort of weather situation, is to prepare a safety kit. This is essential if you find yourself in a bad situation later. So you're basically providing yourself a kit or a tub or some sort of basket that you can reach for in a time of need. And a lot of emergency experts say that the best kind of thing to think about is, do you have enough food, water, and medicine to last you at least 3 days? That's the magic numbers, 3 days. Do you have enough food in your pantry? Do you have enough stored water, water bottles or water jugs, and medicine to where you could go 3 days at home without, a lot of suffering? That would be the first and foremost. Highlight, bold, underline, make sure you have those three things: medicine, food, and water for 3 days. In addition to that, you want in your safety kit extra batteries, blankets, flashlights, first aid kits, rubber boots. Some say even rubber gloves, because oftentimes in a flood, too, this water is not clean water. This is not river water that's running through your home. It's river water plus chemicals that have been drawn up or spilled over. It's river water plus pieces of home, pieces of car, pieces of debris, right? It's not clean swimming water. So you want to make sure, if for whatever reason you see flood water come into your home, you go upstairs, that flood water recedes, you're not walking downstairs in flip flops, right? You want to make sure you've got sturdy sneakers or rubber boots, as mentioned, to be able to get downstairs and not put yourself in a place of danger. First aid kits is obvious. We should have those not only at home, but in our car as well. But I'm kind of focused on the home thing just because oftentimes that is the safest place to be when there's a flood, is home. So make sure you're not only prepared, you and your family, but also preparing the home. Things like sandbags. You could have maybe 3 or 4 sandbags just in the garage waiting for a situation where maybe the water comes up a little too quickly. You can put those right underneath the front door. You can have a plumber come and check the valves of your pipes. Sometimes there's a valve that, the water will, if it's always going this way, if the water tries to go this way, there's a valve that clicks in to prevent the water from going back into the home. And then move your valuables up. This is a big thing I talk about not only with flooding, but with wildfire safety too. You never want to put something valuable like your tub of yearbooks or your tub of, your favorite Christmas ornaments down on the ground. Those need to be on shelves higher up, right? Anything that you're not quite as attached to or quite as, emotionally involved with down on the bottom floor of the garage. And that way, if it does get ruined, it's not the end of the world and you're not going to be devastated by it. This is something, Esme, that I do at home. On the bottom shelf of my garage, I have like plastic Christmas ornaments and in some garland, right? Where if that were to get soggy or moldy, I'm not going to be upset about it.
Toss it out, right?
Exactly, yeah. But the tub that has, my childhood trophies and my childhood blankets and my yearbooks, all of that lives up on the top shelf of the garage, just in case something were to happen. And that's as simple as going home today and swapping those boxes, you know?
And a lot of us have attics here in Texas.
Exactly.
So utilize that space. If you don't want it out in your way all year round, you can just put it up there and know that it's going to be safe when there's an occurrence like a flood that happens.
For sure. That is 100% a good spot for any valuables. The only caveat I will say, living in Texas, it gets hot in our attics, and oftentimes hotter in the attic than the garage.
Yeah.
So if you have anything like that can melt, a favorite candle of some sort, and you put it in the garage, just know that there's a really good chance that candle's going to look a little different coming out of that box.
Might be a little melted.
After summer. Yeah, exactly. But these are kind of the before the flood, right? We're bundling up that safety kit. We're making sure that it's freshly stocked with batteries, with food, with water jugs. And, it is a constant reminder of needing to flip out some of the food. And we try and put those non-perishables in there, but sometimes food does go bad, right? At some point, that can of soup is going to go bad. So we want to make sure everything is all set and replenished, making sure there's, a pair of sneakers, rubber boots, rubber gloves in there, and making sure our home is as safe as possible. Sometimes these things are inevitable, right?
Kristen, I'm sure that you have your own emergency bag. All meteorologists have that on hand, on deck. What is in yours specifically?
Usually those kind of things. So I'll oftentimes go to the grocery store and get like a good 6-7 cans of soup, right? And I'll leave it in the pantry. And then usually something like the turn of the seasons or the change of the clocks, like you want to use those kind of days to flip out some of those emergency kit things, if you will. I actually received a bag from let me think of the proper name for it. Community Impact, I think. I'll have to look it up. But it's through the Capcog. I'm blanking now on it. And I have a whole backpack and it's green and it's in the Weather Center to show you. I just showed it on there last week. We'll circle back to that. But it's got a hard hat.
Wow.
It's got a reflective vest. I mean, you think about the fact that oftentimes, not only in a flood, but certain weather situations, you're going to at least have a power instability, if not no power. So think about that as it gets dark at night. If you had no power at all, would you have light? And it could be that flashlight in your supply kit. It could be a candle in your supply kit, things like that. But I have that backpack. Now it's gonna bother me. I gotta look it up.
It's an organization.
It is through, I want to say it's Homeland Security here in Austin. I want to say it's Community Impact, Community Involvement Neighbors.
Let me see if I could search.
Yeah, because they have a great program, and basically they set you up for if there is an emergency, you'd be not only able to take care of yourself and your family, but also be able to take care of any neighbors in need. And they have these backpacks. I'm not sure if they just hand them out. I think it's like an actual class that you have to take to be able to grab and snag one of those backpacks. But I'll post a photo on my social media later today of that backpack, if I can remember it, since I seem to be blanking on the organization.
Is it? I'm not sure if this is it, but Is it this little backpack?
No, it's okay. Let me see. While we're talking about, I think it's important to note because it could be something as simple as a backpack in your car, right?
Anything, yeah.
We talk a lot about home safety kits, but I think oftentimes, a lot of people are caught off guard while traveling.
Mm-hmm.
Community. I know if the community wasn't, or the backpack wasn't so far, the string wasn't so far, I would run and grab it.
Community preparedness backpack program?
Yes. What does that look like? I'd be able to recognize that backpack as soon as I found it. Community. I think that's it. Community preparedness.
This is for the city of Temecula.
Oh, Temecula. That's in California.
Oh.
Yeah. So it's through WarrenCentralTexas.org. I've actually been trying to get
another backpack.
I know. Well, they're going to be like, you couldn't even remember our name. I've been trying to get an interview with them to be able to promote this. But it is a community preparedness initiative, and I think it's incredible. But anyways, moving on from that, this backpack has what I need.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's, whether it's a backpack or a tub, I think it's very important that everyone has something, right?
Yes.
The 3 days of food, water, and medicine, and that goes for you and your pets too. So 2 legs or 4, we got to make sure everyone is prepared.
And sorry.
No, go ahead.
It's not just flash flooding or flooding that would require something like this.
Right.
I was watching a documentary on the recent California fires, and there is an interview from a mother with her daughter a couple days after she was evacuated, where she was literally saying, I'm wearing the same clothes from when I evacuated. I didn't bring anything with me. I was not prepared.
Yeah.
And that is so sad.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of us, we tend to think best case scenario, right? Mm-hmm. And there's no problem with that until it comes to an emergency or a disaster. As someone who grew up in California, knowing the wildfire risk, knowing oftentimes you only get a couple minutes to get what you need out. And a lot of the times we go after the valuables, right? We're not thinking about, or the pets, absolutely, about the things that could get us day to day. And one of the things I remember growing up was to take your laundry hamper.
What?
Because the laundry hamper that's got the clothes in it, obviously, probably dirty clothes, those are the clothes you're wearing. Those are the clothes that fit. Those are the clothes that you would wear, considering you've recently worn them if they're in the laundry basket,
That's interesting. I didn't think of that.
Like, it's short notice, you've got a couple minutes, grab the important documents, right? Passports, birth certificates, to your home and car documents, all of that. Mm-hmm. But if you need clothes and you need them shortly, instead of running through all your dresser drawers,
picking your favorite shirt.
Exactly, yeah. Grab the laundry basket because you know that you've worn those clothes recently, and that they would fit, right? So that would be like quick pinch, got to get out of the house, whether it's flood or fire or any sort of weather disaster for that matter. A couple more more minute, very It's not a big deal if you don't get to these, but things to think about if you do have the time. Securing your patio furniture, anything you've got in the backyard that can be light enough to float, bring that inside. Unplugging outdoor appliances. You don't want that electrical current going through that water. We talked about stocking the emergency kit, but also alerting neighbors and family. I think that's a big one for any weather disaster, but specifically for a flood, because once that flood happens and you're in it, communication gets very slow, if not comes to a halt. So even a simple text saying, hey, there's a flash flood warning, I'm evacuating to so-and-so's house, right? Mm-hmm. Sending that text to your parents, to a friend, to a neighbor who's not in the flood zone. That way you're accountable to someone, right? You know that there is someone who knows where you are in the case of an emergency. And then the obvious of avoid traveling during heavy rainfall. We know, we've told you all morning long that there is potential for heavy rain in the hill country tonight. So there's no reason for anybody to be out between about midnight and 6 a.m.
If you
around.
see water, turn around. Right?
Exactly. Turn around, don't drown. So that's kind of the front end, if you will, of making sure we're just prepared for that flood scenario, prepared for the potential for rising water
beforehand.
Right? Then we get into it. Then we get into, heaven forbid, a flood that we get caught in. First and foremost, we want to stay informed. And you hear us talk about this all the time. But you got to have multiple ways to get alerts. You can't just rely on the phone, can't just rely on the TV. It's got to be multiple.
Yeah, get that weather app, turn on your radio in your house. I'm sure everybody's talking about it if it's happening.
Yeah, for sure. And, this is a big one too. I think people say, okay, I know I need to evacuate if there's a flash flood warning getting to higher ground. But that's only if, there's not outside surroundings that are underwater. If you, for whatever reason, are looking outside and the whole street is inundated, that window to evacuate has closed, right?
It's done.
You are encouraged to evacuate if advised to do so, but it has to be in a certain situation where you're going to make it to that next higher ground spot. And this was something, that we've been talking about as a weather team after the Hill Country floods of, reading some of the different perspectives of what happened, of some of the campers being told to stay in the cabins because of the lightning threat. Mm-hmm. Yes, that is what you're supposed to do. When there's lightning outside, you are supposed to stay indoors. However, if there is rising water and there's a river flood that is escalating and that situation is becoming more and more dangerous, then you need to evaluate. You need to make those decisions, those hard decisions of, am I going to go outside and, yes, there is a risk of lightning versus am I going to stay inside versus risk of the water coming up?
Drowning.
Yeah, there is, unfortunately, some of those hard life decisions that you have to make that no matter what I'm saying on TV, I can't, unfortunately, be with every single person in all those different scenarios as much as I wish I could. So you do need to take some personal decision making, some of that personal responsibility of saying, okay, what is the best situation for me to get to a place of safety? Sometimes that is just staying home. That is just moving as high up in your home as possible and not evacuating, which is why we oftentimes say only evacuate if you're told to do so. Because what happens is people see the water, they panic, they think, oh, I know, this street. I lived on this street for 65 years. That looks like 3 or 4 inches of water, and they have no idea that the water took out their road, and it's actually 3 or 4 feet deep. It happens all the time. People underestimate the power of water. I say even during classroom visits that I would rather you home so I know where you are than trying to escape and you washing away.
And not even knowing where you're going, where you're walking. Yeah.
No idea, and that's what I said, kind of circling back to what we talked about at the beginning. These weather scenarios are, unfortunately, they're always going to be different. It's never going to be a black and white scenario. Sometimes the safest action is to move to higher ground immediately if you can do so without getting in the water. More often than not, the safe situation is staying home or staying where you are and just moving higher up in that building. There are different methods to staying safe. We try our best to, check off all the lists. If you're doing this, do this. If you're doing this, do this. While we're on TV, talking about flooding, but take action if there is a flood. That either means evacuating on dry ground or going up higher in your home, getting to the roof. And, we've seen a lot during even hurricanes, people, using an axe to
break through that roof,
through the drywall, break through the window to get to the roof. And sometimes you're desperate, right? And you do what you have to do. So those are just different things to think about during a flood. I think the warnings and the alerts are critical in figuring out where is the water, what do I do next? So you have to have a way to get those warnings, get those alerts. You, as May mentioned, the weather app, which obviously we're biased in because we are the ones who manipulate those numbers. We are the ones who sent out those alerts when there's a video update we need to get to you. The Weather Service issues the warnings and the watches, but if you ever see, on the weather app, Meteorologist Kristen Currie shares with you the timing of the latest rain. That's me. That's me writing out those words, making that
Yes.
video forecast, and sending it to y'all. So that would be one that we obviously encourage you to have. The wireless emergency alerts, those would be on your cell phone as long as you have the notifications
Turned
turned
on.
on.
Yeah.
And then a weather radio, a NOAA weather radio, which I got this question last week. A NOAA weather radio isn't like a normal FM radio. It's not just like on playing music. It will only go off if you have it set to a certain frequency
Mm-hmm.
that you can find that hooks up to our local National Weather Service office. So you're only getting alerts to where you are, but it's not like you have to keep it on and listen to the music. No. It's like you turn it to the right frequency.
Mm-hmm.
It's got the alerts on there. It's got an antenna on there too. And you will get, it'll send out a big beeping thing, whether it's tornado warning, severe thunderstorm warning, and a flash flood warning. So that would be obviously a good investment if you don't have one already. We talked about home is the safest place to be. And then you mentioned Esme too.
Turn around, don't drown.
Turn around, don't drown. Tried and true.
Now, what about after the floods?
After the floods. After the floods, similar to during a flood, but it's mainly us, local media, contacting local agencies, trying to find out when it is safe for you to return home. And oftentimes, especially in a flood, it's not immediate, right?
Is that
Like,
why you mentioned the 3 days? 3 days worth of clothing and supplies?
At least. And, we saw this not only with winter storms, but the ice storm, these boil water notices that will go out when sometimes a water supply, they have to go out and check and make sure that it hadn't been contaminated in a flood. Oftentimes when we lose power, you can see some boil water notices go out. I know we saw that during the winter storm of 21.
Yeah.
It was
It was for a while, the boil
and
water
a lot of
notice.
it. I remember for the Austin area, it was the water levels got a little too low for the water treatment plants to be operating efficiently, and so you'll see oftentimes in a flood boil water notices go out because the water treatment
Is contaminated.
yeah, or at least they're still needing to monitor it to make sure it's not contaminated.
And that's when water bottles come in handy,
Yep.
right?
Water
Buy
jugs,
those waters.
water bottles. I mean, I've always been taught to have a case of water at the house no matter what, and I think that's a very good tip. Is whether it's a flash flood or something else, you want to make sure you've got water, whether it's those big jugs that you can buy at Costco or whatever, or those bottles of water. You want to make sure you've got enough, just in case you are with a boil water notice. And a lot of the times when we see boil water notices, you just can't ingest it, right? Like if you need to for whatever reason,
Shower.
yeah. And it kind of depends on the severity of the flood. If it's a power outage and they're just a little worried about, the water levels and that sort of thing, then there's not as much of like a sickness component to it. In the event of a flood, though, you really have to be careful because you think about all that river water full of contaminants. And
You don't know
debris.
where it's coming from, what it's bringing with
Exactly.
it. Yeah.
We showed those pictures after the hill country floods of Lake Marble Falls, and it just looked icky.
Horrible.
So it's going to take a little while for all that debris to move downstream and get everything back up and running again. So it's just better safe than sorry. I typically with the boil water notice will just use bottled water to brush my teeth and that sort of thing. But it is a good thing to note. And then using caution on flooded roadways, ponding on any sort of driveway, parking lot, avoiding those kind of things. Circling back to you don't know how deep that water actually is. And then generators. Carbon monoxide, unfortunately, is one of the leading causes of deaths after a storm. And
Really?
Yeah, not just flooding, but hurricanes too. Of people who lose power, plug the generator in, but it's too close to the house, and that carbon monoxide gets pumped through, the HVAC system or the open windows, and unfortunately you get sick, and things happen. So making sure that you're using those generators properly and avoiding the carbon monoxide poisoning, because we've seen this, especially after Hurricane Ian. We saw a lot of people unfortunately get sick with carbon monoxide because of improper generator use.
Wow.
So
So it's important, if you're going to buy a generator, first learn how to use it. right?
exactly, yeah. Read that manual. Make sure. I think they say it's 10 feet from your home, which is
Wow.
pretty good. It's not going to be right next to you, which is tough too, because you think of it, in a situation like a flood, like you don't want it to be near water either.
No.
If you're putting stuff in with electricity, there should not be any water nearby. And that's hard after a significant flood. I also think it's worth noting when you hear us say flash flood, that could be quite literally a flood that happens very quickly, right? And that can be in the metro area, that can be in a canyon. But there would be a difference between a flash flood, like what we would see on Mopac when it rains very heavy, and all of a sudden the road
roads
gets shut down.
Yeah.
Versus something like a major river flood. Sometimes, if you remember during the July 4th floods, we were able to tell you when the water would crest at Lampasas River, the Lampasas River at Lampasas. That would be a river flood versus, a flash flood, which can happen in the metro and out on those rivers, which we saw on the Guadalupe.
Specifically for this weekend, today, what can we expect? Or what kind of flood are we talking about? How much water?
I'll get to the school visit. I always want to end on a happy note because sometimes this stuff can get real Debbie Downer. So this is our 7-day forecast for the middle of November. Today being November 19th. We've got some spotty showers possible this afternoon. Some of us even got a little bit of drizzle as we talked about, but most of today is friendly. I'm really not worried about today. Midnight tonight into tomorrow, that's when these showers have a lot more to them. So we have a flood risk that starts at midnight in the hill country, runs in, I would say, from about midnight to noon in the hill country before it scoots into the Austin metro tomorrow afternoon after 2 p.m. So this is going to be a late afternoon, evening event for Austin tomorrow. And then a little bit lingers Friday. Saturday is kind of the transition day for us because there's yet another storm coming in Sunday, Monday. You can see both those red boxes highlighting storm number 1 coming in tonight through the day tomorrow and a little bit of Friday. Storm number 2 coming in Sunday into Monday. There's still some uncertainty regarding the timings and the amounts with Sunday into Monday, but we know that with this first storm here, we are expecting a good 2 to 4 inches of rain in the hill country. So it is going to be a good soaking, which we need. We just have to make sure it doesn't come down too quickly. There will be isolated spots of more, as there always are, and isolated spots of less. 2 to 4 is in general. I think the majority of us will be in that 1 to 2 inch mark between tonight, tomorrow, and Friday. So this is only encompassing storm number 1. I wanted to highlight that because depending on how much rain we get through Friday, will kind of set the stage for what we see potentially on Sunday. The Sunday flood risk, as you can see, is higher than what we've got today. Let me see if I can show you. I had today somewhere. Today is
The 19th.
Okay, so this would be Thursday. So this is for tomorrow because most of the rain, the heaviest rain, comes after midnight, right? So after midnight tomorrow in the hill country and then late afternoon, evening for the Austin metro. This is for tomorrow, storm number 1. Storm number 2 would be, here we go, day 5, Sunday. So it's a higher risk, but it's because we're going to have rain already in the ground. So it's not going to take as much falling out of the sky to run into some flash flooding issues once we get into storm number 2 on Sunday. But right now, I would plan for seeing some heavy rain in the hill country overnight, midnight to noon. That would be west of I-35. Austin metro, we could get a couple of little spotty showers today. I'm not worried about it. Our heavy rain threat comes 2 p.m. to about midnight tomorrow.
Thursday.
Yep, Thursday. And then eastern counties, you'll get it after us. So you'll probably start tomorrow late evening through the overnight hours. And so we'll kind of get through storm number 1 before we start talking about all the timing and totals and threats of storm system number 2 Sunday, Monday.
And it is also pretty far away from us right now, so it's hard to get exact numbers and timing. So just remember, Kristen mentioned to stay weather aware, and that is through our app, our website, our streaming platform, our social media, our meteorologist social media. There's so many different ways to get informed. Yeah, you can't miss us.
Nope.
Well, we have your article here on our website about the flood risks and what to do before, during, and after the flood. We have you set it up pretty well. You have before the flood, during the flood, and then you have after the flood, and then all the ways to get those weather updates from KXAN. But I want to get to the classroom visits.
Yeah, I like to end with these just because, this fills my love tank, but it's also a lot of fun to go out into the schools. On Friday, I visited River Place Elementary. This is with Leander ISD, and I was with their third, fourth, and fifth graders. So we talked about flooding, right? What to do in a flood, what to do in a tornado, and lightning, and all that. So this was them on Friday, third, fourth, and fifth River Place Elementary Titans, and this was some of their staff as well. The principal there on the far right in the black shirt. So I appreciated Miss Smith for having me out. This is my first time up there at River Place Elementary. This is technically Austin, very far North Austin, but
Oh, wow.
it was a good time.
Wow, these kiddos are more weather aware than most of us right now. They know
Listen,
what to do.
Even if it's a student going home and saying, Mom and Dad, we got to do this, and my job has been fulfilled that day.
Yes. Well, this was a cute school visit. I'm excited to see other ones that you have. Maybe after this week's weather, you can ask them some more questions and get them more prepared for what to do.
A little bit of a lull with Thanksgiving coming up. Most of the schools are off next week, but we'll get going in December. We never stop.
Yeah, and I'm sure that they're all excited and waiting for you to come to their classrooms.
I hope so.
Well, thank you so much, Kristen, for joining me here on Kristen's Classroom. And again, everyone stay safe and weather aware and be prepared, right?
Yep, absolutely.
Thank you.